Awesome. So Kedron, welcome. Welcome to everyone out there to the UX Collab with Aaron and Kedron. So together we have 30 years of UX experience, either in the research side or in the strategy side, doing design things. I didn't really realize that. Someone pointed that out to me. I said, oh man, thank you for that. But we're both passionate about the user experience field, not just because of what we do, but like because of the UX field and what it's designed to do. And it is to make people's lives better through design. I was at an event here just this last weekend where there's a lot of stuff about vision and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's just design. They give it a different word, but it's design. You know what? Sometimes we need a little help with design, and sometimes we need help with each other. So we have this thing called UX Collab we've been doing for a while. And at one point we talked to each other. It's like, hey, what else can we do? And we said, well, let's try a podcast. So here we are. This is I think our third recording now. I'm calling it episode 2 because I called the first one episode 0. I don't know why, but I did that. So our desire, as I've said before, for this podcast is to share what we've learned along the way with others over the last 30 years. So we want to see other people in the UX world grow from where they are today, regardless of where they're at in the UX journey. So if you've never conducted UX work before, but you're super interested, or you're leading a team or a project, or just you're an expert in the field, awesome. We believe that everyone can grow, and we'd like to be a part of that. So our hope is to help you grow in the craft of UX. We also believe that we're all designed by God to live the life that He has set before us. The focus of this podcast is on design and the field of UX, but we feel it's important that you know that what motivates us to live life by design comes from our Creator. And with that, today we have planned for you a really awkward position for me to be in. Normally, I'm the one conducting an interview and talking to people and getting them to tell me stuff and pulling information out of them. Kedron said, I want to see if I can, pull some information out of you. So why don't we flip the script here a little bit? So that's what we're going to do.
I'm looking forward to this one too. Yeah. The flipping the script and asking the researcher questions. That's going to be good. At least you got all the questions in advance. You have a little time to think about them. So hopefully this won't be too painful.
Some tough guy said that's a good idea. You should do that for people. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm stoked about this conversation because not only do I get to know you a little bit better, because I think there's some things here that we haven't touched on over the last, and we've been chatting about every other week for 5 years-ish, something like that.
I think so.
It's been a while.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, but everyone else gets to know you and your perspective on UX a bit better, and probably learn a bunch of stuff. So, because I think there's going to be some good insights here.
All right.
Ready?
Cool.
You ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Aaron, tell us a bit about how long have you been leading research at Covenant Eyes?
I think it's been about 6 years. I was kind of putting that timeline together a little bit, and I think when I kind of dove into research was about 6 years ago, and I kind of started down that path.
Yep. And then what kind of research are you conducting? Qualitative, quantitative, big data mining stuff?
If you go to conferences and stuff like that, you're always trying to get to know people. Part of the networking thing, that question comes up, like, what do you do? How do you do it? I'm like, I don't know. If it has research attached to it, I've probably done it. Sometimes I knew I was doing it, and sometimes I didn't know what I was doing. I just was doing it and learned, oh, that's that kind of research. That's neat. A lot of qualitative. I've done surveys that are obviously more quantitative, but early on in my career, I guess when it comes to research, I sent a survey out, and I'm sitting there thinking, surveys just don't tell you enough. They tell you what, but they don't tell you why. You got to get people. You got to put all these comment boxes in there so people can tell you the why. Then I got 4,300 responses to the survey. They had like 10 or 11 comment boxes in there, and I learned, no, that's not what surveys are for. I mean, sure, a little bit, but I learned a little bit about the difference between qualitative research and quantitative research in that experience. So, but I've done a lot of things. A lot of stuff I've done has really been sort of like product research and design research. So as it's been explained to me when I've done this, because I've talked, well, why the different terms like user researcher, design researcher, UX researcher? For years, my title was design researcher, and the idea behind that, the intent behind that was because the research I did was to inform the design of something. So I was usually supporting the product team at Covenant Eyes and doing research to inform either who we're building the product for, how we should build the product for them, and if we've met the mark. That sort of thing has sort of been a lot of the work that I've done.
Let's take a time out, because I'm guessing that the listener, you, the sitting here with us in this conversation, may not know what Covenant Eyes is. Like when you talk about product, talk about doing research and surveys, help us understand a little, just enough about what Covenant Eyes is and why research is important to that, to kind of know why this is even relevant.
Yeah. So Covenant Eyes as a company exists to help generally hold people accountable. So it's not a spy situation, which it's been used that way. And I started off in member care or customer service, and we'd get asked questions oftentimes by whether it's a spouse or like a parole officer or something like that. And it's almost like they're wanting to use Covenant Eyes as spyware to catch somebody doing something wrong. But Covenant Eyes really
so Covenant Eyes is a digital product.
It's a digital product. So we're software as a service. And our software would be installed either on a mobile device or on a computer. And historically, we started off monitoring websites, URLs. So you go on to wherever you go online, if Covenant Eyes is installed, we recorded every URL. So every piece of every website was recorded in a log. And we would break that log down, look for different types of content. At that time, we had a rating system to tell you if it was the rating system was like highly mature or teen level or youth, or maybe it was very innocuous, so it was rated E for everyone. And we had an algorithm that did that. And based on that report of activity, somebody who's holding you accountable, somebody who you chose to hold you accountable, would say, cool, well, Aaron said that he wants to avoid these kind of websites and he didn't go there this week. Hey, good job, whatever the case might be. However, if you want someplace that goes against what he said he wants to do, because Aaron doesn't want to view these kind of websites or view what's on those websites, but you went there. Hey, Aaron, like what's going on? Can you just tell me what? Like, we allow a conversation to happen. Now, I've learned through research, not everyone wants to have a conversation. A lot of people who use our service are using our service because they do not want to view pornography, or because somebody who's close to them doesn't want them to view pornography because of the impact it has on the relationship. So I've learned in the context sometimes of a marriage that they don't actually want to talk about it. They just want to know that everything is good. In the context of that relationship. So that's sort of an interesting thing, but that's a lot of what we do. So when I'm doing research, I'm learning from people who would use our service. I actually learned from professionals like counselors and small group leaders. I've talked with pastoral staff at several different churches and different denominations. And I mean, I kind of tell people I do recon for Covenant Eyes. This is one of the ways I kind of tongue in cheek describe it, because I go out there and I try to find out what's going on with people in the world. What's the business doing? What are we trying to do? And I'm trying to find a fit. So if you've ever heard that term fit, is like, hey, are the people out there in the world have this need or this pain or this gain that they want to have in their life, this job they want to accomplish. We think that this idea, this concept is going to meet that need. And I literally go, all right, cool, business. Why do you think it's going to meet those needs? Cool. Hey, person, why do you have those needs? And then I try to go through and I bring the information together. I'm not always making the final decision. My hope is to I'm always a facilitator. I'm almost always a facilitator. I'm a facilitator of people outside of the business and people inside the business to be like, all right, cool. So based on what you learn from each other, like, do you feel you should go forward this way or not? And how does that work? Now, if that helps, that's kind of a nutshell version.
Yeah, I love it. So the takeaway that I'm getting out of this is like it's a software as a service, but you've got not only individual users of the software, you've got a lot of people around that user. You've got and I'm imagining in many cases, the person that's using the software isn't the same as the purchaser of the software. And so it's easy to imagine how complex the understanding it needs to be. And just like how complex the field is in order to understand it, to really to find those moments of fit. And I think that's one of the unique aspects about Covenant Eyes that's very different than many other SaaS products out there, is that there's so many different actors that influence the purchasing decision, the use decision, the ongoing, and it's complicated. And from a researcher's perspective, anybody who's interested in this field can learn a ton from the complex domain that you're in. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's the only world I've ever known for research. So it's like kind of, for me, I'm like, yeah, no, it's normal. But but it's true though, because there's complexity. There's oftentimes there really is some emotional baggage that comes into the situation like away. It's already there. So like you mentioned, the person purchasing isn't always the one using it, or sometimes a person is purchasing it because of a heavy amount of influence by somebody else. Like, because like, no, if you care enough about this relationship, we're going to do this. And it's not every case, it's not every situation, but I've learned, as with a lot of other things in life, the pain has to be high enough for you to do something about it before you can do it. And that's really the sad truth. But then, there's people who proactively use Covenant Eyes because they just don't want to fall into any traps. They don't want to form any bad habits. But if I just look at things, generally there's a reason that you need something like Covenant Eyes to get you back on track. And the people who do it and are committed to it, they have success. And it's because what we really offer is accountability. People use it in different ways. Like I said, not everyone actually wants to have that conversation, but they still have accountability because I've told you I want to behave this way, or I told you I would behave this way because I care enough about a relationship. So just the fact that that I'm behaving this way is enough to tell you, so I don't have to have a conversation about it. It feels like a different level of accountability. I've actually revealed a few things I've shared internally that I'm like, oh, here's something. So I'm chewing on it. I have something new to explore. Like, I'm always finding something new to explore. Even in this space I've been in for the last 6 years, there's something new to explore regularly.
Yeah. So I guess with that, what actually piqued your interest in doing this type of research?
I mean, honestly, when I got into UX in general, so I've been with Covenant Eyes for 11 years, and at the time I was running a warehouse for a window and door company, and wasn't a bad job. I still liked people who I worked with there, but I was like, I don't feel like this is a way I want to keep going. And I knew Ron DeHaas, the founder of Covenant Eyes, and I knew that they were going to be hiring in their customer service department. So I was like, hey, Ron, like, what do I need to do to get in at Covenant Eyes? He's like, well, it's fill out an application, contact this person. So I got started at Covenant Eyes because I was like, it's a different field, it's a different industry. I know nothing about software. I mean, since high school, I've framed buildings, I've built decks, I've managed warehouses, I've managed projects in the construction space. I've done a whole lot of things in the construction world, not hardly anything with software. But I was like, I need a new place to go. There was no, I'd like to say I had this great vision for where I was going to go and what I was going to do, but no, I need to do something different. I don't know what it is, but this is a company that I feel like is going to go somewhere and I want to be on board. And then I met David, who introduced me to some of the UX things, and I started learning some stuff, and I was like, I don't know about this design piece. I'm not the most creative person when it comes to some things when people think of design. But I spent a whole lot of time over the last several years finding out people have this project they need to accomplish. They have this thing they need to do. And sometimes they know exactly what it is that they need, and I can help them just fill it. I can just help them fill it. Other times they don't really know what they need. So I would just ask them questions and find out, oh, okay, so you're trying to accomplish this. Well, you need to make sure you keep water and air out of there and all these other things. And this is how the thing works. So you need to make sure you do these things. So I was telling people, I wasn't researching, I was telling them what they needed. But it just was like a natural thing of like, oh, I know how to help people solve problems that they have. So how does that translate into UX? Honestly, it took a little bit of, I was put in the water and told to swim,
Yeah.
which is fine. I did, and I started out doing the product design thing, and I was designing stuff. I was working with developers and I was working with QA, and it was doing good. But when I was first exposed to usability testing and finding out, like watching people struggle with things or watching people succeed with things, I was like, oh, but this is my thing. And then I took the survey design course and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I started doing some more work and I started exploring. I said that survey I did, a few years, maybe a year or two into things. But I was like, oh, okay, so I need to learn there's behavioral things that matter, there's emotional things that matter, there's all these different facets that kind of matter. And I just kind of kept getting curious. I don't know how to explain it, but I just kind of kept getting curious. I think as a researcher, as somebody in the UX field in general, curiosity actually causes you to thrive.
Yeah.
And I've kind of, often said, just always be curious was kind of one of the things I'd say for a while. So you just always got to be curious. If you can have a curious mind, you can learn just about anything. So that's kind of been an approach that I've taken ever since.
I dig it. For those you listening in with us, you just hear my dog barking. Someone's ringing the doorbell, but we're gonna keep cruising. I'll mute here
Good.
when I hit the want to get through these questions. This next one's a two-parter. What is your favorite part of research, and what is the part that's most difficult? So kind of a yin and yang there.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite part of research. Let me look, because I wrote some stuff up a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I've put on there observing people. There's something I've thought about, just observing people, watching how they behave. I mean, I just did a diary study over a couple of weeks with a group of people. So I got to do like an onboarding interview, and then they replied to a survey every day for a week. And then we did like a wrap-up interview. And in that, I got to learn where they're at in the beginning of this thing. Like, all right, cool. They know they're going to try something new. So it's neat, it's exciting. But there was also, they were a little underwhelmed because I asked for as raw of a version of the product that they wanted to test as possible. I said, I know you think all these things are valuable, and I know you want to put them in there to see how people respond to it, but I want to see what people ask us for without those things existing. But because of what we do at Covenant Eyes, the relationships are always a factor. The way that they behaved in the beginning, and then some of the feedback I got through at the end, I'm asking them questions, just kind of feed off of what I've already learned from them. I'm kind of feed it back to them. And I could see some incongruency in whether it was just their satisfaction level with things or where they're at, like in their relationships. So I'm just kind of, again, constantly observing people and what they're going through and experiencing, and sharing that with people. So it's kind of understanding people and making them feel understood, by the way, because when you do these interviews, you try not to lead people, but usually there comes a point like, all right, so I'm hearing you say this, but because I want to make sure I'm doing my part as a researcher, I want to confirm from you, like, this is what I heard. So it's like, hey, Aaron, you said, cats are better than dogs. Why do you say that? Because they don't bark in the middle of your podcasts. No, I'm just kidding.
Facts.
I don't believe either one of those things are true, by the way. But you kind of follow up with people, and then it's like, oh, that's interesting. So you prefer animals that don't make a lot of noise? Yes. So you kind of get that confirmation in there. So I'm kind of learning, so I can take that, and then I can share that story with somebody. I'm sharing their story to improve our product, right? But I'm only trying to improve our product because their story is shaping our service to improve more people's lives. So that observing people leads to helping other people, if that makes sense. So they don't always get to know whose story it was or what that story was exactly. I'm hoping to do more of that in a different way in the future, because that's kind of what I'm passionate about. But that's honestly is a big part of what it is. You kind of take things from a low level of understanding, or maybe you have some level of understanding, but then allowing people's stories, even sometimes when they're painful, to honestly end up helping them. You do end up helping them, because some people in my context, just the fact that they get to talk to somebody about what's going on that they can feel safe talking about takes a little bit of load off their shoulders. But then other people are helped, and if they can see, so we take this and we learn and we put that in our product. I don't know if they can always see it. I don't know if they can always see it, but I have a feeling sometimes they can see, no, they did this thing that we talked about. And how cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then other people have no idea about that. Their experience with our product, and because I believe our product is pretty important in today's day and age. We're helping a lot of people, and we're helping people be a better version of themselves. It's not just our product. We're a tool that's part of it. But I mean, we help. We get to be part of that. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the
Yeah.
question directly or not, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. So what about the flip side of that? What's the most difficult part?
People are the most exciting and most difficult thing in every situation. I mean, I say that with all due respect. There's just a lot going on. So I'm busy, you're busy, and we all have our priorities and trying to align them and make things happen. And it's just tough. It's not a bad thing. So it's challenging, but I believe that's the sort of thing that makes us better. So hopefully I can take that and look at it and be like, yeah, you know what? Like, so from that last experience, it was kind of tough because I didn't understand this part about what you do. You didn't understand this part about what I do. And this person over here that doesn't work for us, they don't have a clue about anything. So hopefully it wasn't painful for them. So it's not necessarily just people. I just is a primary, I guess, factor in the work that I'm working with people to get stuff done. I guess maybe it's really logistics and understand where everyone's at. I mean, Commonize isn't a huge company, but we do have a couple hundred employees now. So when you're involved in something, it's hard to know what everyone is doing and that sort of thing, and keeping on track. So I think the more intentional you are about being aware of that, and the more intentional everyone is about what everyone else is going on, it helps mitigate that. But it is one of the most challenging things. I've also been the lone researcher at Commonize for quite a long time, so I've been on an island. Like they've even drawn org charts, and like here's Aaron doing the research thing over here. Like he's in the middle of all these things, but he's kind of on his own. And we kind of laugh about it. It's like, but it's just a fact of life. So when you say like, what kind of research have you done? I'm like, no, I've literally like, look, I'm like I'm the hub of the wheel. I'm not a spoke. I'm not on the outside. I'm in the middle trying to help people out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Sorry. So one of the favorite parts is about research is capturing those stories, helping them like translate them into some sort of narrative that can surface value. How do you actually do that? How do you actually communicate your findings?
It varies a little bit, and that's something that I feel like I experiment and tinker with the most. Part of that also comes from I'm not the world's greatest designer, and so some of the visual, trying to make sense of it, I usually lean on somebody else to help me with. But as far as the stories go, man, it's interesting. I don't know if it'd be a good way to explain it or not. Sticky notes are a part of my life. They're more digital now. Digital whiteboards actually are one of my favorite things that I've encountered in the last 18 months. Because so there's pieces of the conversation that I pull out when I'm talking to somebody. So I try to be as in the conversation as I can, but usually I'm creating a new sticky note and I'm trying to track it so I'm creating the puzzle pieces of the story as I go. And then I go back through and I just kind of create these themes. Like, oh, here's some pain that they've had. Here's some wins that they've had. I put those things together, and I usually do literally write a story on what they told us about their life, how they got to where they had a need for Commonize, challenges they've had, stuff like that. So I'm really literally writing a story. Usually it's like sort of like a blog post, and usually I'll pull out some of the key parts of an interview and include some video clips in there so you can kind of hear from the person, like this is their story. So it's not just Aaron's interpretation. No, I want you to know like, oh, this really was this person. I always protect that person's identity. I usually come up with creative nicknames. They're not super creative, but like if I find like something that they do in their career or whatever, I'm like, if I can make it rhyme and be silly and stick with people, like, because I want people to go back to the story, I can be like, hey, remember this interview? I don't remember that person's name anymore, but I remember the name that I gave them.
Yeah.
So
that's a great little takeaway there for those of us that do research, that we're looking for those, whatever can trigger us to remember, to recall, to build empathy. So hearing that story like hearing the narrative, hearing how that person's journey, but also giving that little hook to like bring you back in when you hear it in conversation. Oh, so and so, or we got this, you can like this shorthand reference that now evokes all of that
Yeah.
memory of that story. That's so critical. Because I tell you that
Yeah.
actually kind of maybe leads into this next question is, how do you actually integrate the research into product development?
Oh, it's an interesting one. It's been interesting at Covenant Eyes because it's like sometimes it feels natural and sometimes it feels not as natural. Um, the one good thing is there's a pretty good amount of buy-in for research at Covenant Eyes. I know sometimes that in itself is a challenge. But there's a pretty good amount of buy-in. Like we actually right now we're trying to run a certain number of hypotheses in our work for everything that we do. I'm a firm believer that we really shouldn't start designing or building a product until we've like it should all be based off of an experiment, which always starts with at least one hypothesis. Like honestly, when we're done here, I'll be writing like 8 to 10 hypotheses about my next adventure, because these are all things that are important to the product owner. So one of the things I do right now, I actually just started recently, is I meet once a week with a product owner. Like, what are you working on? What's the most important thing right now, and what do you need to learn about it, and how can I help? Or just keeping up on what we're currently working on right now. We're happen to be in sort of like a warm up phase. So the conversation is like, what do you need to learn? All right. So we met, we talked some things over. So I'll be building out some cards that would say, we believe that this is, this thing's going to help Johnny and Susie. And so in order to prove that, we're going to do these things. So they're already kind of building some stuff. So I'm going to look at, all right, cool, they're building this because I think it's going to meet this need. And then I'm going to measure it by, whatever measurement is relevant. Maybe it's 70% of people like mention this, or if I have analytics in place, like, out of a pool of 3,000 people, 100 people start using it. That's could be a win. And as a product matures, it turns into something different where it's like, all right, cool. So we have 100 new people using it, but over the last 30 days, how many people kept using it? So I'm getting into more of the measurement side of things right now, but I'm kind of a fan of Google's Heart framework, which has you measuring their happiness, their engagement, adoption, retention, and then test success. If you can kind of look at all those things, you don't get to look at them all at once, but if you keep those things in mind, you can have a pretty good way of integrating. And usually if you talk to a product owner or somebody who's responsible for a product, whatever their title might be, that usually kind of gets their attention. Oh, I want to know how happy people are. I want to know how they engage with the product. They might not know what it means right away, but as you talk to them, they obviously know what adoption and retention is. Yeah, how many new users do I have? How many keep using it? And how do I know that's good? Well, you don't maybe know what's good yet, depending on what it is. So that how am I going to measure it, and how do I know if I'm right is kind of an interesting one. I always like right now, I feel like that's the hardest one to answer for me. But anyways, those are things how I don't know if I'm again directly answering it, but that's kind of how I've integrated a lot of the research in there. Also, there's always a team of people, so I'm usually making sure we get the findings and getting it. And there's designers and other folks who are doing a lot of the work of putting it into product. So I'm not always as involved with some of the making sure the findings are integrated into the actual product.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that just jumped out at me was you were kind of unpacking that story a bit, is that you've been leading research for 6 years, and there's no, like, this is a sign of the industry at large. I don't think this is terribly unique to Covenant Eyes. Like, how to capitalize on research, the ongoing value of research. We're all still figuring that out, because research means something very different if your product is brand new.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a lot of folks start when they're research, or they kick things off. They'll do some research in order to shape the initial product offering. But then how do you embed ongoing research into a product that is decades old? Like, that is a very different conversation. I love that people get to hear your story and your journey into like mature and maturing research practice, because I think especially it is a growing field for sure. And a lot of organizations are still trying to figure it out. Even, though they maybe reference research that kicked them off 5 years ago or 10 years ago as like a point of reference,
Yeah.
and realizing that, hey, like things change over time, but we maybe don't have mature research practice. How do we get better about making sure that we close those feedback loops between hypothesis and testing? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a treat.
No, it's an ongoing thing, and we're doing better. We're getting better. Some of it's getting better because of me. Some of it's getting better because of other people.
Sure, it's a team effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We actually do have another researcher at Conize right now who's really working on trying to put some pieces together for a research repository. I jokingly tell her, you're the details person. It's kind of true though. And they're important. They're important to what we do. So
absolutely. Hey, maybe let's jump into that. How do you marry the qual and the quant in your surfacing findings and sharing with the team, product integration, all that stuff? And usually very different skill sets. So
yeah,
how do you bring them together?
It's interesting. So the way I look at it, I don't remember if I have this in my notes or not, but the way that I look at it is you start with qualitative research. You don't like, so you might start off by interviewing 5 users about something to understand like a problem space. So the less you know, the more qualitative things usually are. So you try to learn from that, you build from it. So if you have some personas already, or if you don't have personas, so like I've usually had a set of personas to work with. So I'll go looking for people who might meet that general description and talk with them to be like, all right, so this person over here has these needs, all these things. They told us this because I want to talk to them about their world. So it's sort of like a contextual inquiry or something like that. It's not, so a lot of times when I do things, it doesn't feel like, if you ever take a course on research, I don't know if I've ever done anything exactly how it's prescribed, because I'm usually not going into somebody's house and I'm not watching what they're doing on their computers. So I've not gone that level. I don't know if I ever will, but I try to take that. Here's what we learned from this person. Here's what they're trying to do. And then, so now I know something. So, but I also probably have a new research question. So that new research question should be based off of what I already believed or something. So what do I already know? I know this person has these needs in their life, these gaps in their life, whatever it is. What are we doing that meets those needs right now? So that's 2 pieces of information from the business and from the user. And great. So now we want to move forward. And as that space like matures, so if you got a new product, you're rolling something new out, a new idea, the more mature it gets, you're just building off what you learned last round. So like I just said, I did a diary study recently. I learned all these things from 14 people. I learned this set of information. And what I'm learning this next cycle is based off of what I learned from them, but I'm inviting 300 people. But I know some questions that I have now based on what I learned there. Like I expect to learn these things so I can ask a little bit more closed-ended question, because I don't want to analyze 50,000 comments I've learned. So I can kind of close that out a little bit. I can get a little bit more creative on how I do that. And so that's not really usability testing yet. This is still a shaping phase. So as that product matures, the more people I actually want to include in, the more quantitative it gets. So like the more understanding you have about something, the more quantitative it tends to get. And I'm measuring things based off of knowledge that I've built up over time. So by the time that thing gets released, we're into all like more behavioral metrics. I'm not asking a lot of people things. I'm monitoring stuff based on what we learned. So if you have that hypothesis in the beginning of we believe this and we know we're right at that, and then you learn about it, you intentionally say, this is what we learned. It should build and compound, and then the more it bounds. So to me, you grow from qualitative into quantitative, and that's just kind of where it goes. Then it kind of transitions into like, so at the beginning we had this problem, we believe we're going to solve it this way. Then at the end, like there's a cool. We believe we were going to solve it this way. We believed it was going to affect these people. Was it true? So it kind of builds off that. I don't know if that helps thinking
Yeah,
about
no,
the
that's
learning, but
gold.
that's how I build off it.
That is gold. And any person in the product space can easily see how like these behaviors, these practices drastically reduce the risk of releasing anything new, right? Like forming
Yeah.
that hypothesis early, doing that kind of like gated approach to research where like, hey, the problem space is really fuzzy. Let's actually have
Yeah.
conversations with people about that, mature it by, honing in on key aspects of that, by inviting more people in to shape our understanding. Like that is
Yeah.
huge. That is
And you
so
just,
huge.
and you grow it, and it's, you kind of have to temper yourself a little bit because you get excited. Oh, cool. That group of 10 people really thought this was awesome. Let's invite
Yeah.
10,000.
Yeah.
No, let's wait a little bit. Let's calm down just a second. But one thing
Yeah.
that I've learned is, because I've done this a few times with developments we've had at Covenant, where it's been a pretty significant change. And so you kind of offer the this or that at some point. So if this isn't going to be true of every situation, but so say you invite people into a test, and you're making a big enough change to where you're like, yeah, this is changing your world a little bit. Are you ready to commit to this change? And I'll tell you something. So you used to use the product this way. We gave you this new experience. You've tried it for a couple of weeks. After you've used this for a couple of weeks, you have to choose. Do you want the old way or the new way?
Yeah.
And if you have
Yeah.
more people choosing the old way, you still have some work to do. You probably still have some
Yeah.
work to do either way. But if
Yeah.
you kind of do that, you're just building off the learning. So if you want to know what your retention might be based off of what you do, you build it into your plan as you go along. So you don't get to the point where I've released this to all my users and am I going to have 50% quit or 30%? You learn that as you go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You de-risk some of that, the weight of that decision by taking smaller bites. So maybe that kind of leads into this next question. How do you know when you've done enough research?
I don't know.
Doesn't seem like a fair question to ask a researcher.
it's an interesting one, and I've told you, and I don't know, people listen to I don't have a formal education in doing research. I've learned it all on the job. I've learned a lot of stuff in books. I've read a lot of things, and there's a thing out there called like data saturation. So you talk about enough research. Well, what does it mean? What do you mean? Have you done enough research? Sometimes we like, especially in today's day and age, it's easy. I need more information. I need more information. I need to know all the things. The more you think you need to know 100% of the things, the harder your life is going to be.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are really good at making decisions and taking action and that sort of thing are, they'll go off like 70% of the information.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. So how do you know when you've got 70% of the information? I don't know if I've got this down scientifically or a way to say it. Like I look at it as like I learned these things, and this is sort of an errand thing, and it's maybe not a best practice thing. But if I look at some data, I'll look at some stuff, and I'll kind of look for something early on, and okay, this started happening. This confirmed it. This confirmed it. I get to the point where it's like, do you really need to keep confirming it, or do you want to like go do this thing that they asked for and see if we can test that? So there's kind of almost like, for me, there's a bit of an intuitive like, yeah, I've learned it. You want to have some math, you want to have some data, because you can't go to an executive and say, I don't have this feeling. But you're gonna have some data. I have distraction now too. Mine's cuter than yours though.
All right.
Hang on just a second.
Definitely. Definitely.
That was my daughter. She needs something. She'll get it. She'll get it eventually. Working from home, it's good.
Right. This is the joys of working from home. You get to see your little ones.
That's right. She likes to hear about research too. So yeah, I don't know if I answered that last question fully or not. I feel like I end up saying that a lot, but
that's it's a question that like, when do we know if we have enough research? We're trying to probably answer a lot of different questions. depending on who's asking it, the person who's asking that question that's just trying to have 100% confidence in the thing that they're about to do is the right thing. Maybe that's the wrong question to ask.
Yeah. So there's a thing. So unfortunately in my world, one of the most frustrating and also most accurate responses to those sorts of questions is it depends. It depends on who you're doing the work for. Depends on what the work is. It depends on so many things. So a couple of things. I'm not gonna like go deep into this, but if you want to learn more about have I done enough research, I'll give you a couple of resources to maybe check out. One is called "It's Our Research" by Tomer Sharon, and that talks about who you're doing the work research with. How so it's more of a doing the work of research well, is in like it's not telling you how to do research. It's more how to who are your stakeholders, like when you know, like I don't know if you really get to know when have you done enough research, but if you get to know some of the practices in there, it might help you with understanding, like if you do this work with this person, they need more information, they need more control, they're going to be this person's going to just totally give it to you and be good with it. But it's the idea of like the research is always, I'm always in service to somebody with research. So it's never just my research, it's never just your research, we're doing it together in service of other people, and that's the point. Another one is, it's called Just Enough Research by Erica Hall. It tries to help dial it in. It's like we want to know all the things all the time, and you might find yourself building a test plan or something, and you have all these questions in there. And I've seen it. I've had people come to me with a plan, like we need to know all these things. I'm like, all right, cool, but what do you need to know? What's the most important thing you know from this whole thing? Great, cool. Let's start with that, because you've got 15 things on your list, and that's unrealistic for what you're trying to do. So what can we learn here that might inform the next phase? So part of that is, for me, it's really been a little bit of a gut thing. Some of that comes with experience, I guess. But I would say it's usually best not to overthink it. If it's getting complicated, you probably overthought it.
Yeah, let's just put a like gold star on that little comment. It in some cases is a gut thing. I think it's the tension that is unresolved with a mature discipline practice, or mature a research practice, is that we can pretend that the data will answer all the questions, but at the end of the day, there's aspects about product development that are subjective, and you have to lean into your intuition. What's your gut telling you? What is your experience telling you? And sometimes that maybe even conflicts with your research. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it confirms it. But yeah, I think there's leave room for that intuition to help guide the process.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what ethical concerns are on your radar right now when you're thinking about research?
Always do no harm. Maybe that, I don't know how people feel about that phrase. People have probably different feelings about it. I work with people who are often in a stressed relationship, a stressed life, because of what they see as an addiction in their life. People can argue that one however they want, and I've heard it, but so there's laws around protecting people's privacy. I believe it's a moral obligation to, somebody trusted me with this information about their life, I'm going to do everything I can to protect it. So when it comes to ethical concerns, it's, in my world, like I said, somebody's got something they're telling me about, and I had somebody just out in public, and they learned what I do, like, oh, I use that, and like they kind of had that aha moment of like, oh, I use it, then let you could see the tone change to, to help me with an addiction. And I was like, I was like, I get it. I get it. So I don't know if I'm being too oversimple with these things, but I look at this as like, it is my responsibility. One of my highest responsibilities is to take care of the people who's given me some information, some data. I've done this for internal things, like for surveys, like employee engagement. And, I've had people come up to me say, but Aaron, like, how private is it? I goes, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure like nothing's coming back on you,
Yeah.
because like we want feedback that's honest feedback. I suppose if somebody wanted to get really creative, like anyone could, some people can unlock lots of things, but if, especially when people's privacy is a concern,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing for me, is just making sure that people's privacy is maintained. Some people are happy to share their story, happy to share their data, but I see that as a moral obligation to protect people. Oh, I don't know what else to say about that one. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Well, I can easily imagine how research can be like, if research is commissioned by an organization. I'm not saying Covenant Eyes, but commissioned by an organization to conduct a certain thing or to influence a behavior in a certain direction. Like there, that could be have some very, in my opinion, some clear ethical concerns if we're trying to influence someone to pick a higher mortgage rate. I don't know, it feels like a maybe something we should think twice about. If we're trying to understand what could trigger a person to make a larger sports bet, like research can be enabled to do things
Yeah,
that don't necessarily elevate the human experience.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
with great power comes great responsibility, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and that's I mean, to me, what you're describing was like I'd call them dark patterns. Um, I don't know. There's a part of that. It's like I'd have to see what that would be like going into something, doing something for somebody else. There's a part of me that, like, I'm gonna do everything in my power as a researcher to like bring information. Like I don't know. This is gonna sound really out there, but like I see myself as sort of a source of truth. So I'm trying to bring whatever is true from a set of research. So part of it on me is like knowing who's asking for the research and how they intend to use it. Then I
Hmm.
might have to decide, am I gonna willing to participate in that?
Yeah,
Because I'm a source of information. I'm not going to be the one to make that change. Like, oh, if I do this, it'll cause them to pay us more or do more. Sometimes, if it's a product, if it's an honest thing, like if you can charge somebody $20 instead of 10, good for you, go do it. But if it's I'm going to cause somebody some extra pain in their debt and in their life, uh, because I'm selfish and greedy, I don't want no part of that.
yeah,
So thankfully I haven't had to like worry about that in anything that I've done so far. But that would be a big part of it. Is like, if you're doing something, if you're doing a contract work for somebody, I would definitely say, find out as much as you can. Do your research on the people looking to hire you. Um, Especially if if the ethical concerns are important to you, which I hope they are. Make sure you know who you're doing the work with. My daughter had a instance the other day where she's only 12, but she some older girls like, hey, we're doing the same and we think you should do with this, and they lied to her, and she kind of went along with it. Like nothing bad's gonna happen to her. So if she ever hears this, she'll be upset that I even mentioned it. But um I was like, no, you got to know. Like, I know you trusted those people, but you got to know, like, you got to know what's going on before you commit to something. So that's a kind of a basic life thing. Is like, where do you stand? Like, who are you? And if you're getting into something with somebody, if it feels off, it might be hard to walk away from some things, but sometimes it really is better to walk away.
yeah. And I just want to like pause and highlight what you just said there. Know what you stand for. Like if you want to go into these, any sort of uncharted territory to help someone map it out, know your own boundaries, know what you have an opinion and about right and wrong.
Yeah,
Like go in with a clear worldview on like what would shape a better tomorrow, not
yeah,
just deeper pockets, right?
right,
Every organization that's on the planet has to have some sort of revenue and margin to exist. That's part
right.
of the deal. But beyond that, like what are we what are we doing? So
Yeah,
yeah. highlight that. If you are wondering about ethical concerns in research, do some soul searching to figure out for yourself what's a better picture of tomorrow and how you can participate in that, and
Yeah.
how you can avoid participating in the opposite.
Right.
Yeah. Well, with
Yeah.
that, let's talk about legacy a bit. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's just entering the research field?
um, it should be fun. If it stops being fun, you're doing something wrong. Now things aren't always fun, right? Like, so there's going to be moments where there's going to be stress, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things. But I think you ought to enjoy anything that you're doing. We happen to be talking research. That happens to be what I do. I enjoy building research plans. I enjoy executing the research. Like, I enjoy making things happen. Honestly, the hardest part for me sometimes is on analyzing the things, putting stuff together. I mean, that's also fun, but it's another skill, it's another talent, it's another ability. But you got to make stuff that digestible to people. So you're probably going to be somebody who maybe is like me, that building it and making it happen. Actually, I think a lot of people like building it, making it happen, getting those. The hard part is digesting it and putting it into those chunks. But that hard part is where things happen. That's where the insights are actually gathered. That's where the value ends up being generated from. So I would say kind of find like what you're passionate about. Even at that, like I didn't. So honestly, I fell into the field of research at Covenant. I didn't go looking for a company that says, you know what, I didn't go out there and say, I want to find a company who wants to help people stop viewing pornography and do research for them. I didn't have that experience, right? Like that wasn't like a life vision I had. It was an opportunity that I saw and took advantage of. So that's another thing, is like, if an opportunity presents itself, like we were just talking about the ethical thing, does it match who you are? Like I used to tell people, when you're like, if you go to a job interview, you're trying to sell yourself, but the company should be selling themselves too. And then if you sell yourselves to each other, you found a fit, and like things might go on. But if there's no like deal both ways, if it doesn't work for both of you, if it's not a win-win, I guess, it's just not a win. So anyways, those are all lots of things. My biggest thing, I guess, would be enjoy the work, enjoy it, have fun with it. And you know what, I'm going to go back to that ethical thing. Like that's a big thing for me. Like if you look at strengths finder, like my number 2 thing is belief. So it's probably no secret that would line up strongly with me, but really have some fun with it, enjoy it. I don't know what else I would say, but I feel like that's more important to me as I get older. You really find stuff you enjoy and do it.
Yeah, that's good advice for, I think, anybody in life, right? Find work that you can enjoy doing. Yeah. All right. So what's one lesson from practicing research that has surprised you?
It's an interesting that question. There's been a lot of things that have surprised me. What I wrote down here, and it's still, I guess, it's still relevant here, is in research. If you're not familiar, a lot of times there's incentives involved with research. Not every survey you get comes with an incentive, but it is a thing that happens fairly often. But if you find people who are passionate about what you're doing, they're willing to do it. Like I've got people like participating in the work, like, hey, how do I keep doing this? How to stay involved? Because they want to be a part of making the world a better place. So it's kind of cool if you're part of something that is intended to make the world a better place, that people latch onto. They want to help you make it better. And they'll even pay you. They're paying to use your product, and they're giving you, like, it's kind of awesome. Like, you believe in this product, this thing so much that you're willing to help make it better, and you're not looking for anything in return. Like, it's kind of cool. Like I think I take that for granted sometimes, but it's really kind of
fantastic.
Cool.
And not everybody has a user base that that can endures them to the product quite like that.
Yeah, right. But
awesome.
you can imagine, like, if you're like, I don't know, I go to shoes apparently for some reason, like Nike, Adidas, or even like the auto manufacturers, Jeep had a slogan for a while. It's like, we're designed for you because we're designed by you or something like that. I don't remember how it
Yeah.
went. Jeep. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if I just butchered that and stuff. But
They're not sponsors. Don't worry about
yeah, right. But like people who know their like businesses that know the people have those people everywhere. I mean, I'm sure
it.
Apple does. I'm sure
Oh
other
yeah.
companies do, Harley Davidson. Like if you go to a good event or a good conference or something like that at the end, like listen, give us your feedback because you'll make it better. I say
Yep.
that to people all the time. So when I leave a conference, I'm like, are you really going to do that? I want to see. Now I'm going to go to another conference, just see if you actually did what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Because if I tell somebody I'm taking the information you gave me to make it better, I'm going to do it. And that makes them feel good. So don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't do that if you're not going to do it.
Yeah. Maybe that feeds back into the ethical concerns with research, right? If you're gonna invite people in to shape something, you have a bit of responsibility to do something with it, whether it
Yeah.
is like to give it a proper funeral, that's something, but also to give
Yeah.
it a proper life, that's like you're responsible to do something with it
Yeah.
and
I
not just let
also
it float
do.
for nothing,
Yeah. And going to that one, I make sure I let people know if it's a face-to-face thing or if it's in research, if it's written or verbal, I let them know like what I'm about to show you, what we're about to talk about may or may not exist in this shape in the future. Just so that way they know, like you're
Yeah.
going to inform us on what we're going to do. You're going to inform the direction. It doesn't mean that what you look at today is ever going to exist for our product
Right.
base, because chances are that design is going to change or the thing might get killed or whatever the case might be. Um, but I'm telling you, if you do that well and you're making changes that people can see, it'll show up. Like I have some
Yeah.
recurring surveys that people will respond to and be like, hey, I noticed you made this change. That's really cool. I'm glad you guys did that, And so
Yeah.
people know when they're being heard and when they're not. And if you have ongoing surveys out there as a researcher and you hear the same thing over and over again, and someone like says, hey, why is the story not changing? Well, we didn't change anything yet.
Yeah.
If you change something, the story will change. What you hear from people will
Yeah.
change. And you know what? They will probably start thanking you because they'll notice those changes. So you'll hear those things. I might have made that sound negative in the framing there, but I mean, it's just usually what people respond to surveys when they call you because they have a problem, not because they're happy. It's just the way it
Yeah.
goes.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. We're about ready to wrap up, but I want to know who shapes the way that you view research.
yes, I talked about this a little bit earlier and preempting some resources, I guess. The first person, and probably the person who probably still shapes it, whether he realizes it or not, would be Dave, and he's the COO at Covenant Eyes. He gave me the lifeline into UX and gave me a shot, and really a lot of what I've learned about UX come from him somehow. He's kind of guided me in some ways and some resources and give me learning opportunities. My former manager, Barbara, also played a large role in that. So when I did my first usability studies and stuff like that, she showed me some things that she did and with some places she worked with and some ways that she shapes the studies and does the findings. Some of the stuff I do isn't exactly like that anymore, but it definitely shaped some of those things. So some of it was just honestly was people I worked for, which is kind of cool. It wasn't a professor or an institution. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but people who
That's awesome.
practiced it and showed me. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Outside of actual work and probably places that they pushed me to would be honestly, there's a lot of influence in information architecture. So if you are interested in it's not all the same. But if you're designing some things like a basic card sort gets you going someplace in a lot of things you're going to do. And that's information architecture. So Abby Covert, Dan Klein, the Understanding Group are some people who have influenced me in that regard. Other people I've learned from is like Jared Spool, Jake Knapp, the Google Ventures team, Jeff Soro, Tomer Sharon, Mike Kunievsky, Peter Morville, Cooper Design, Strategizer. Those are all ones that's a big list there. I can put that in the comment or in the description here, but those are people who I've like either read their books, I've been at their conferences, I've been at attended their workshops. They might have come to Codonize and taught us things, depends on what the situation is there. But I've met several of those folks. The first few years, as with anything that's new, I was taking in everything I could. So I saw some of these folks at conferences, like I said, did the workshops and really kind of helped shape some of the things I did. And I don't take everything that they do and put it in place, but I've definitely taken pieces from each of those folks or their organizations and applied it. So I think it's kind of neat. It's kind of interesting. I run into people who they haven't heard of some people that I've heard of, like even Jesse James Garrett, somebody who I didn't put in here, but he's somebody who I've learned stuff from his books, and I hear him still practiced. And those are people I've learned about and heard about for 10 years, or Cooper Design, who's I don't think any longer exists. But a lot of people didn't know who these folks were. I said, oh, really? I just thought this was kind of common because that was my introduction to things. I was like, But so I'll make sure I'll put see if I can get some links to most of these folks, because some of them are books that I've read, and I'm the kind of person I take what I need. So I don't usually read a full book all the time unless it's something I really feel like I need to read the whole book. But Mike Konievsky's book, I believe it's called Observing the User Experience. When I needed a refresher on surveys, I go to that book. If I need a refresher on contextual inquiries, I go to that book. There's a whole lot of stuff in that book that you can get for one book.
Yeah.
So, so those are some of the people who have kind of shaped my view of research. There's others who still do and will continue to, but those were some of the people who up front have shaped a lot of that.
I dig it. Well, I gotta jump into some research conversations this afternoon. So now I'm all jazzed up.
Nice.
Ready to go.
Good deal. You should be ready now. You get all the secrets.
Yeah, this is good. I'm looking forward. So. I know that those that are listening to that, if you're paying attention, you've got a whole page full of notes on practice, on maturing a practice, on integrating these tools and insights into product development and the benefits of doing so. Yeah, this has been a really helpful conversation for sure.
Yeah, and if you listen to this and you're like, have questions or concerns, or hey, I've done it this way, I love learning from people. So you've heard Aaron's perspective on some things today, but man, I'd love to hear anyone else's perspectives on these things. I crave it. I always tell people I love feedback. I do research for a reason. I love talking. I love hearing from people. I love getting smarter. I love helping. Like this is called UX Collab because it's not Aaron Kedron telling people how to do UX. It's like, man, I really want to hear from you. So if you have something to share, please share. If you're not want to do that like in a public comment, I believe uxcollab@gmail.com exists now. Man, I think I set that up. Nice. So I'll confirm that, but I'll leave all the things, but I want to hear from people. I love hearing from people. I don't know if I could say that loud or clear enough. Feedback. A
researcher loves hearing from people. All right.
That's what I do. So
I dig it.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks, Kedron. This has been great. And
thank you. This is rich.
Awesome. We'll do this again. Appreciate having the script flipped on me. Hopefully I played that role well.
Well done. Well done. All right.
All right. We'll see you.
Ciao.